The evening rush at Blue Harbor had begun like any other for Lily Chen. The clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversations, and the occasional burst of laughter filled the upscale Manhattan restaurant, where she had worked for almost 2 years now. Lily tucked a strand of her dark hair behind her ear and balanced 3 plates of seared scallops along her arm with practiced ease. Table 7's appetizers, she muttered to herself, weaving between the crowded tables. The restaurant's soft lighting cast a warm glow over the white tablecloths and sleek decor that had earned Blue Harbor its reputation as one of the city's most elegant dining spots. At 24, Lily wasn't where she had imagined she would be by now. Her fingers, which moved so deftly between plates and trays, were meant for piano keys, not dinner orders. Growing up with a mother who taught piano lessons from their small apartment, Lily had shown talent from the moment she could reach the keys. By 12, she was winning local competitions. By 16, she was being scouted by prestigious music schools. Then life happened. "Excuse me, miss? We asked for the wine list 10 minutes ago." A woman at table 9 frowned at Lily as she passed. "I'm so sorry. I'll bring it right over," Lily replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She delivered the scallops first, then grabbed a wine list from the hostess stand. This was her 3rd double shift this week. Between the restaurant and weekend gigs playing at a small jazz club downtown, Lily was barely keeping up with her community college tuition and her mother's medical bills. The restaurant manager, Howard, a balding man with perpetually sweaty palms, appeared beside her as she handed the wine list to table 9. "Lily, we've got a VIP coming in. Victor Harrington just called to bump his reservation up to right now. He's got a party of 6. Howard wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. "You're taking his table." Lily's stomach nodded. Everyone in the service industry knew about Victor Harrington, the tech billionaire whose company had revolutionized artificial intelligence systems. They also knew about his reputation for being impossibly demanding. "But I already have 5 tables, Howard," Lily protested. "And now you have 6. He specifically asked for the corner booth." Howard's tone left no room for discussion. "Think of the tips," he added, as if that solved everything. Lily sighed and nodded. She needed the money too badly to argue. Victor Harrington and his guests arrived 20 minutes later. He walked in like he owned the place, which, given his wealth, he probably could have bought on a whim. Tall and lean with salt and pepper hair, he wore a charcoal suit that likely cost more than Lily's monthly rent. His face was all sharp angles, with piercing gray eyes that seemed to evaluate everything in terms of its worth. "Mr. Harrington." "Welcome to Blue Harbor," Howard gushed, personally escorting the group to their table. "Lily here will be taking care of you tonight. She's our best." Victor barely acknowledged the introduction, sliding into the booth and immediately checking his phone. The others in his party, 2 women and 3 men, all dressed in equally expensive attire, settled in around him. "We'll start with your best champagne," Victor said, without looking up. "The Krug, if you have it." "Of course, sir," Lily responded, jotting down the order. The bottle alone would cost over $400. "Would you like to hear tonight's specials?" One of the men nodded encouragingly, but Victor cut in. "No need, we'll have the tasting menu. All of us." He finally looked up at Lily, his gaze clinical. "No substitutions. No delays." "Right away, Mr. Harrington." As Lily turned to place their order, the front doors burst open again, and a group of 8 young men in varying states of inebriation stumbled in. The bachelor party had a reservation, but their rowdiness immediately set a different tone in the otherwise refined atmosphere. "Howard, you can't seat them here," Lily whispered urgently as the manager led the bachelor party to the table directly adjacent to Victor's booth. Howard looked pained. "It's their reservation time and we're full." "What do you want me to do?" The bachelor party wasted no time ordering rounds of shots and speaking at volumes more suited to a sports bar than Blue Harbor. Lily could feel Victor's cold stare as she delivered the champagne to his table. "Is this how you normally run things here?" Victor asked as she poured. His tone was quiet but cutting like a paper-thin blade. "I apologize for the noise. Mr. Harrington, it's a bachelor celebration," Lily explained, trying to keep her hands steady as she filled the delicate flutes. "I don't care if it's the second coming. I'm paying for a civilized dining experience." Victor took a sip of champagne and frowned slightly. "This isn't properly chilled." Before Lily could respond, a roar of laughter erupted from the bachelor party as someone told a particularly crude joke. Victor set down his glass with deliberate slowness. Get your manager. Now. Howard appeared at the table so quickly that Lily wondered if he'd been hovering nearby, anticipating trouble. "Mr. Harrington, is there a problem?" Howard asked, his voice unnaturally high. "Either they go or we go," Victor stated flatly, "and I doubt you want to lose this table." He gestured to his guests, who collectively represented enough wealth to buy and sell the restaurant several times over. Howard's face flushed red. "I understand, sir, but they have a reservation. I can't just ask them to leave." "Then find a solution," Victor replied coldly. "That's what managers do, isn't it, manage?" The bachelor party chose that moment to start a toast, with the best man standing on his chair and raising his voice to be heard over the restaurant's ambient noise. Lily watched Howard's face contort with panic. The restaurant couldn't afford to lose Victor Harrington's business, but they also couldn't kick out a party with a legitimate reservation. The situation was escalating rapidly, and Lily could almost see Howard's career flashing before his eyes. Then Victor's gaze landed on Lily's hands as she nervously adjusted her apron. His eyes narrowed slightly. "You, waitress, your hands? You play an instrument, don't you?" The question came so abruptly that Lily blinked in surprise. Yes, piano," she admitted. Victor's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "The piano in the corner. Does it work?" Lily glanced at the baby grand piano that sat mostly for show in the restaurant's far corner. It was occasionally played during Sunday brunches but remained silent most evenings. "It should," she replied cautiously. "But I'm working, I can't just—" "How much do you make in tips on a night like this?" Victor interrupted. Howard jumped in. "Sir, I don't think— I wasn't asking you." Victor cut him off sharply before turning back to Lily. "A rough estimate." Lily swallowed hard. "Maybe $150? On a good night." Victor pulled out his wallet and extracted 10 crisp $100 bills. He placed them on the table. "Play something that will drown out that circus," he said, nodding toward the bachelor party. "If you're any good, there's another 500 when you're done." Howard's eyes bulged at the money. "Lily, we could make an exception." "I haven't played in public for months," Lily protested, though her eyes lingered on the cash. That kind of money would cover next month's payment for her mother's treatment. The best man at the bachelor party was now encouraging everyone to bang their glasses with their silverware, creating a cacophony that made several nearby diners wince. 1,500, Victor stated, adding 5 more bills to the stack. "But if you can't quiet them down with whatever you play, you're fired." He looked at Howard. "I assume you support this solution?" Howard, caught between the impossible choices before him, gave a jerky nod. "Of course, Mr. Harrington. Lily is quite talented." Lily felt a flare of anger. How dare this rich stranger waltz in and threaten her job? How dare Howard agree to it? Yet the money sitting on the table represented more than just next month's medical bills. It could cover her tuition for the semester too. "Fine," she said, untying her apron. "I'll play." The corner where the piano sat was dimly lit, almost as if the restaurant had forgotten the instrument existed. As Lily made her way over, she felt eyes following her. She hadn't performed for a real audience since her mother's diagnosis 2 years ago, when she'd given up her music school scholarship to work full-time. She sat down at the bench, ran her fingers lightly over the keys to test them, and was relieved to find the piano reasonably well-tuned. But what should she play? Classical seemed too stuffy, pop too trivial for the challenge before her. Victor Harrington approached, leaning against the piano with an expression that was equal parts skepticism and challenge. The restaurant had grown quieter as people noticed something unusual was happening. "Well?" he prompted. "Impress me." Lily took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of the moment, her job, the money, the audience, and most of all, the arrogant billionaire who thought he could control everything and everyone with his wealth. She began with a simple melody, something soft and unobtrusive. Victor immediately shook his head. "Boring," he declared. "If you want to earn that money, play something with passion. Otherwise, don't waste my time." The bachelor party had temporarily lowered their volume out of curiosity, but they were already starting to lose interest, their voices rising again. Lily's fingers hovered over the keys. She thought of her mother, who always told her that music was the language of emotion when words failed. She thought of the countless hours of practice, the competitions, the dreams deferred. She thought of the bills piling up on her kitchen table. Then she looked up at Victor Harrington's challenging stare and made her decision. Lily straightened her back and met Victor's gaze. The restaurant had grown quieter as more diners noticed the standoff at the piano. Even the bachelor party had paused their celebration, curious about what was happening. "If you want passion," Lily said, her voice steadier than she felt, "then you should be careful what you ask for." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting her fingers find their home on the keys. Then, without sheet music or preparation, she began to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto, Numbers 2. It was a piece she had performed at her last recital before her mother got sick, a composition known for its emotional intensity and technical difficulty. The opening chords resonated through the restaurant, deep and commanding. Lily's hands moved with growing confidence as the familiar notes flowed through her. This wasn't the tame background music restaurants usually employed. This was a thunderstorm after months of drought. Several diners turned in their seats. The waitstaff paused mid-service. Even the bachelor party fell silent, their raucous energy temporarily subdued by the unexpected performance. Victor's expression remained unchanged, but he straightened up from his casual lean against the piano. His eyes narrowed slightly as he watched Lily's hands dance across the keys with practiced precision. As she played, memories flooded back, her mother sitting beside her on the bench gently correcting her finger positions. The countless hours of practice until her shoulders ached. The standing ovation at her final recital. Music had been her life, her future, her identity, until reality forced her to set it aside. The piece built in intensity, and Lily poured her frustration into every note, frustration at her circumstances, at Howard's spinelessness, at Victor's arrogance. When she reached the movement's emotional peak, she opened her eyes briefly and caught a glimpse of the restaurant. Everyone had stopped what they were doing. The bachelor party stood transfixed. Howard watched with his mouth slightly open, and Victor Harrington's cold mask had slipped just enough to reveal something like surprise. Lily closed her eyes again and let the music carry her. For these few minutes, she wasn't a waitress struggling to pay bills. She was the pianist she had trained to become, the artist she still was beneath the uniform and the tired smile. When she finished the movement and the final notes faded, the silence in the restaurant was complete. Then someone from the bachelor party began to clap, and suddenly the entire room erupted in applause. Several diners rose to their feet. One of the women at Victor's table dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Lily's chest rose and fell with her quickened breath as she looked up at Victor. His face had returned to its usual composed state, but something in his eyes had changed. "Not bad," he said, his voice lacking its earlier edge. "Where did you train?" Lily's hands fell to her lap. "I had a scholarship to Juilliard. I never got to use it." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" Before she could answer, Howard rushed over, his face flushed with excitement. "Wasn't that wonderful, Mr. Harrington? I told you she was talented." Victor ignored him, his gaze still fixed on Lily. "Play something else," he said. It wasn't a request. Lily glanced at the bachelor party, who had returned to their seats but remained relatively subdued. "I've done what you asked. They're quiet now." "I'm aware," Victor replied. "Now I want to hear something original. Do you compose?" The question caught her off guard. "Sometimes. Nothing formal. Play something you wrote." Lily hesitated. Her compositions were personal, never meant for an audience like this. They were diary entries in musical form, created during sleepless nights and stolen moments between shifts. "I don't think—" "Double the payment," Victor interrupted, pulling out his wallet again. $3,000 for one original piece. Howard gasped audibly. Several nearby diners exchanged glances. Lily stared at Victor, trying to understand his game. Was this just rich person entertainment? Watching a waitress jump through hoops for cash? But there was something in his expression that didn't quite match that theory, a focused intensity that went beyond casual amusement. "Fine," she said finally. "One more piece." She took a deep breath and began to play a composition she had written during the long nights at her mother's hospital bedside. It started softly, hesitantly, like someone feeling their way through darkness. The melody was simple but haunting, built around a recurring theme that evolved as the piece progressed. Gaining confidence, finding beauty in the midst of uncertainty. Unlike the Rachmaninoff, this piece wasn't designed to impress with technical brilliance. It was honest in a way that classical showpieces often weren't. It was the musical equivalent of a whispered truth. As she played, Lily forgot about Victor, about Howard, about the money. She forgot about the restaurant and its patrons. Her mind drifted to the hospital room where she'd first worked out this melody, to her mother's tired smile when she heard it, to the way the night nurse had paused in the doorway to listen. The piece built to a gentle climax before returning to its central theme, now transformed by everything that had come before. When Lily played the final notes, her eyes were damp. The restaurant remained silent for several seconds after she finished. Then the applause began again, more subdued this time, but somehow more meaningful. Lily wiped her eyes quickly and looked up. Victor was watching her with an unreadable expression. Without a word, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a stack of bills and placed them on the piano. "What's your name?" he asked. Lily Chen." Victor nodded as if confirming something to himself. "Come to my table when you're ready to return to work. We need to talk." He walked back to his booth, leaving Lily sitting at the piano with $3,000 and a churning sense of confusion. The bachelor party, now surprisingly respectful, raised their glasses to her as she stood. One of them called out, "That was beautiful, miss." Howard scurried over, practically vibrating with excitement. "Lily, that was amazing. I had no idea you could play like that. Mr. Harrington wants to speak with you." "I heard him," Lily replied, still trying to process what had just happened. She tucked the money into her apron pocket, the weight of it unfamiliar and almost unreal. "Do you think he's going to offer you a job?" Howard asked, his earlier dismissiveness completely forgotten. "His company does something with AI and music, doesn't it?" "I don't know what he wants," Lily said honestly. She straightened her uniform and tried to compose herself. "But I still have tables to serve." "Forget about your other tables," Howard said, waving his hand dismissively. "Jenny can cover them. Mr. Harrington is the priority now." Lily felt a flicker of anger. "Those are my tips, Howard. I'll make sure you get them," he assured her, though they both knew that was unlikely. "Just don't keep him waiting." With a sigh, Lily made her way back to Victor's table. The group had resumed their dinner, but the atmosphere had changed. They were more subdued, and several of them looked up at her with new interest as she approached. "You wanted to speak with me, Mr. Harrington?" Lily kept her voice professional, despite the emotional toll of the performance. Victor gestured to an empty chair that had been pulled up to the end of the table. "Sit down." Lily glanced at Howard, who nodded frantically from across the room. Reluctantly, she sat. "Tell me about yourself," Victor said, taking a sip of his wine. "And don't give me the waitress story. Tell me about the pianist." Lily folded her hands in her lap. "There's not much to tell. I started playing when I was 5. My mother taught piano lessons from our apartment. I was good enough to win some competitions, good enough for the Juilliard scholarship. Then my mother got sick. Cancer. The kind that doesn't go away with one round of treatment." She paused, unused to sharing her story with strangers. Victor waited, his gaze steady. "Insurance covered some of it, but not enough. I deferred the scholarship, thinking it would just be for a year. Took this job and a weekend gig playing at a small club downtown. That was 2 years ago. Now I'm taking classes at the community college when I can afford it. And the piece you just played? When did you write that?" Victor asked. "During her second round of chemo," Lily answered, surprised by her own candor. "The hospital had a small piano in the family waiting area. I'd play when she was sleeping." Victor nodded slowly. One of the women at the table, an elegant older woman with silver hair, leaned forward. "It was lovely, dear. Truly moving." "Thank you," Lily replied, unsure where this conversation was heading. Victor set down his glass and studied her with the same intensity he'd shown at the piano. "My sister was a pianist," he said after a moment. His use of past tense wasn't lost on Lily. The table grew quiet. Based on the surprised looks from the others, this wasn't information Victor shared frequently. "She died 6 years ago. Car accident." His voice remained even, but something in his eyes changed. "She composed too. Your style reminded me of hers." Lily didn't know how to respond. "I'm sorry for your loss." Victor nodded once, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. He wrote something on the back before sliding it across the table to her. "I'm on the board of the Harrington Music Foundation. It was her project, not mine. I've neglected it since she died." He tapped the card. "Call this number tomorrow. Ask for Diane. Tell her I said to set up an audition." Lily stared at the card. "An audition?" The foundation provides scholarships to musicians who demonstrate exceptional talent, but face financial barriers. My sister believed music shouldn't be reserved for those who can afford the training. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She would have liked your composition. Before Lily could respond, Victor turned to Howard, who had been hovering nearby. The check, please. And Ms. Chen is to be relieved of her duties for the remainder of the evening. With full pay and tips, of course. Howard nodded eagerly. Of course, Mr. Harrington, right away. Lily found her voice. Why are you doing this? Victor considered her question. For a moment, the cold businessman facade slipped, revealing something more human underneath. Let's just say you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Consider it a mutual favor. He turned back to his guest, clearly ending the conversation. Lily stood, the business card clutched in her hand, feeling as though the ground beneath her had shifted. Lily stood outside the Harrington Foundation building, clutching her folder of sheet music. The Manhattan skyscraper loomed above her, all glass and steel reaching toward the clouds. People in expensive suits streamed past her, their purposeful strides making her feel even more out of place. She glanced down at her outfit, a simple black dress she'd worn to countless waitressing job interviews, now paired with her mother's pearl earrings for luck. It was the most professional thing she owned. But standing here, it felt woefully inadequate. It had been 3 days since the night at Blue Harbor. 3 days of questioning whether she should call the number Victor had given her, of practicing until her fingers cramped, of explaining to her mother why she'd suddenly brought home $3,000 in cash. You earned it with your music, her mother had said, eyes bright with pride despite the fatigue that seemed permanently etched on her face these days. Just like I always knew you would. Lily had tried to give her the money for the medical bills, but her mother had refused. Keep it for school, she'd insisted. My treatments are covered for now. That wasn't entirely true. There would be more bills coming, but Lily knew better than to argue. Her mother's pride was one of the few things her illness hadn't taken. Taking a deep breath, Lily pushed through the revolving door into the building's vast marble lobby. A security guard directed her to the elevator bank after checking her name against a list. The Harrington Foundation occupied the entire 47th floor. The elevator rose smoothly, giving Lily's stomach a floating sensation that matched her nervousness. When the doors opened, she stepped into a reception area, where a wall of windows offered a breathtaking view of Central Park. Can I help you? Asked the receptionist, a young woman with a friendly smile. I'm Lily Chen. I have an appointment with Diane. Victor Harrington said I should call about an audition. Even saying it out loud felt surreal. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly. Of course, Miss Chen. We've been expecting you. Please have a seat. Diane will be with you shortly. Lily sat on one of the sleek leather couches, her folder balanced on her knees. The reception area featured framed photographs of musicians performing on stages around the world, all bearing the Harrington Foundation logo. There were also several black and white portraits of a woman playing piano, a woman with Victor's same intense eyes and sharp features, but with a softness to her expression that her brother lacked. Ms. Chen, a tall woman with short gray hair and striking blue eyes, approached. I'm Diane Wells, Executive Director of the Harrington Foundation. Thank you for coming in today. Lily stood, shaking the offered hand. Thank you for seeing me. Follow me, please. We have a performance space ready for your audition. As they walked down a corridor lined with more photographs, Diane spoke casually. You've certainly made an impression on Victor. He rarely takes a personal interest in our scholarship candidates. I still don't understand why he's doing this, Lily admitted. Diane gave her a thoughtful look. Victor changed after his sister's death. Alexandra was the heart of this foundation. She believed in using their family wealth to help talented musicians who lacked resources. When we lost her, Victor kept the foundation running, but it became mechanical. Just another business obligation. She paused. Until you, apparently. They entered a room that made Lily's breath catch. It was a small concert hall with perhaps 50 seats arranged in a semicircle around a stunning Steinway grand piano that gleamed under the overhead lights. This is our audition and recital space, Diane explained. The acoustics are exceptional. Lily nodded, her eyes fixed on the piano. It was the kind of instrument she dreamed of playing, worth more than she would earn in years at the restaurant. The judges will be here shortly, Diane continued. In the meantime, feel free to warm up. Lily placed her folder on the piano's music stand and sat on the bench, running her fingers lightly over the keys. The action was perfect, responsive without being too light, offering just the right resistance beneath her fingers. She began to play scales, then transitioned into a simple Bach prelude to warm up. The piano's tone was rich and nuanced, bringing out subtleties in the music that her community college's practice pianos could never capture. So absorbed was she in the instrument that Lily didn't notice the door opening until she heard footsteps. She stopped playing and turned to see Victor Harrington enter alongside 3 other people who carried notepads. "Don't stop on our account," Victor said, taking a seat in the front row. The others, 2 women and a man, sat beside him. "These are our foundation's music directors. They'll be evaluating your performance." Diane joined them, completing the panel of judges. "Whenever you're ready, Ms. Chen. We'd like to hear 2 pieces, 1 classical selection and 1 of your original compositions, if possible." Lily nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. This was a real audition, with real judges, not just a favor from a billionaire with a momentary interest in her playing. These people evaluated professional musicians for a living. She turned back to the piano, trying to calm her racing heart. For her classical piece, she had prepared Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. Challenging but beautiful, a piece that showcased both technical skill and emotional depth. As she began to play, Lily forced herself to forget about the judges, about Victor, about the stakes of this audition. Instead, she focused on the music, on the story the piece told, beginning with its questioning melody, building through its increasingly complex variations, and finally arriving at its passionate conclusion. When she finished, there was silence. She didn't dare look at the judges. "And your original piece?" Diane prompted gently. Lily took a moment to gather herself, then began playing her own composition, not the one from the restaurant, but something she'd been working on for years, adding to it and refining it as her life changed. It incorporated elements of classical structure with hints of jazz and folk influences, reflecting the musical journey that had shaped her. As she played the final chords, she kept her eyes closed, almost afraid to break the spell the music had cast. When she finally turned to face the judges, they were writing notes. Only Victor was watching her, his expression unreadable. "Thank you, Ms. Chen," one of the music directors said. "That was quite moving. Could you tell us about your background and training?" Lily explained her history, her mother's teaching, her early competitions, the community programs that had recognized her talent, and finally, the scholarship she'd had to defer. "And what are your goals?" "If you were to receive support from the foundation?" asked the male judge. "I want to finish my formal education," Lily answered honestly. "But I also want to teach in communities like the one I grew up in. There are so many talented kids who never get the chance to develop their skills because lessons are too expensive or instruments aren't available." The judges exchanged glances. Diane smiled encouragingly. "One last question," said the other female judge. "Why music? What does it mean to you personally?" Lily considered the question. "Music has been my constant companion," she said finally. "When my mother got sick and everything else in my life was falling apart, music remained. It's how I process joy, grief, hope, everything. It's not just what I do. It's how I understand the world." The judges nodded, making final notes. Diane stood. "Thank you, Ms. Chen. We'll discuss your audition and be in touch very soon. Victor, will you be joining our deliberation?" Victor, who had remained silent throughout, stood as well. "Actually, I'd like a word with Ms. Chen first, if you don't mind." The others filed out, leaving Lily alone with Victor in the performance space. He approached the piano, running his hand along its polished surface. "My sister practiced on this piano," he said quietly. She would spend hours here working on her compositions. Lily waited, unsure where this was going. "The piece you played at the restaurant," Victor continued, "the one you wrote for your mother. It reminded me of her work, not in style necessarily, but in honesty. Alexandra never played to impress. She played to communicate." He turned to face Lily directly. "I established this foundation because she asked me to. It was her dream to support musicians who had the talent but not the resources. After she died, I kept it running because it was what she would have wanted, but I stopped caring about the mission." He paused. "Until I heard you play." Lily was struck by the vulnerability in his voice, so different from the commanding presence at the restaurant. The foundation typically offers scholarships, performance opportunities, sometimes instruments, Victor explained. But I'd like to propose something different in your case. A full sponsorship, tuition, living expenses, medical coverage for your mother's treatments, and a stipend so you don't have to wait tables while studying. Lily stared at him, speechless. In return, he continued, you would perform occasionally at foundation events and eventually teach in our community programs. Alexandra always believed that talent comes with responsibility, that those who have the gift of music should share it with others. Why me? Lily finally managed to ask. You must hear dozens of talented musicians. Victor's expression softened slightly. Because when you played your composition, it was the first time in 6 years that I felt like my sister was in the room again. He straightened his tie, his business demeanor returning. Think of it as an investment. The foundation invests in promising musicians all the time. Before Lily could respond, the door opened and Diane returned. The judges have reached a decision if you'd like to join us, Victor. He nodded. Consider my offer, Ms. Chen, regardless of the committee's decision. He followed Diane out, leaving Lily alone with the piano and a future suddenly full of possibilities she hadn't dared to imagine. The hospital waiting room was quieter than usual. Lily sat beside her mother, Helen, who was leafing through a magazine while they waited for her doctor to call them in for her follow-up appointment. 3 weeks had passed since Lily's audition at the Harrington Foundation. You're fidgeting again, Helen noted without looking up from her magazine. That's the third time you've checked your phone in 5 minutes. Lily slipped her phone back into her pocket. Sorry, I'm just expecting an email. From the foundation? Helen asked, setting the magazine aside. Despite the toll chemotherapy had taken on her body, her eyes remained bright and alert. Honey, you've been checking every 5 minutes for days now. It'll come when it comes, Lily sighed. I know, it's just, they said they'd let me know by the end of the week, and it's already Thursday. The day after her audition, Lily had received a call from Diane, informing her that the judges had been unanimously impressed with her performance. The formal offer letter detailing the terms of her sponsorship would be sent once the foundation's legal team had prepared the documents. That had been nearly 3 weeks ago. Every day Lily checked her email obsessively, waiting for news that would change their lives. Ms. Chen? A nurse appeared at the door. Dr. Patel will see you and your mother now. They followed the nurse down a familiar hallway to the oncologist's office. Dr. Patel greeted them with a warm smile, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. Helen, Lily, good to see you both. Please have a seat. Lily held her breath as Dr. Patel opened her mother's file. These appointments always filled her with dread. Fear that the cancer had returned, that the treatments weren't working, that they'd have to start the grueling process all over again. I'm pleased to say your latest scans look very good, Dr. Patel began, turning her computer monitor so they could see the images. The tumor has continued to shrink and your blood work shows improvement in all the markers we've been monitoring. Helen squeezed Lily's hand. That's wonderful news. It is, Dr. Patel agreed. I'd like to reduce your chemotherapy schedule to once monthly for the next 3 months, then reassess. If things continue this way, we might be able to move to a purely monitoring phase by the end of the year. Lily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Good news had been so rare over the past 2 years that she hardly knew how to react to it. What about the side effects? She asked. Will they lessen with the reduced schedule? Most likely, Dr. Patel nodded. Your mother should start to regain her energy, though it will be gradual. The important thing is to keep up with the medications and nutrition plan we've discussed. As Dr. Patel continued explaining the next steps in her mother's treatment, Lily's phone vibrated in her pocket. Normally, she would ignore it during an appointment. But given the circumstances, she discreetly checked the screen. It was an email from the Harrington Foundation. Her heart raced as she excused herself, stepping into the hallway to read the message. The email was brief, asking her to come to the foundation offices tomorrow at 10 a.m. to finalize the details of her sponsorship. Attached was a preliminary agreement outlining everything Victor had promised: tuition coverage, living stipend, health care benefits that would cover her mother's treatments, and more. It was really happening. When she returned to the office, both her mother and Dr. Patel looked at her questioningly. Good news? Her mother asked, noting Lily's expression. The best, Lily replied, her voice thick with emotion. Mom, everything's going to be okay. Later that evening, Lily sat at their small kitchen table, reviewing the foundation's agreement for the 10th time. Her mother was resting in the bedroom, tired from the day's appointment but buoyed by the positive medical news. The sponsorship was more generous than Lily had dared to hope. Not only would it cover her education at Juilliard, where she would be allowed to reapply with the foundation's backing, but it also included housing in a foundation-owned apartment near campus, a monthly stipend and comprehensive health care for both her and her mother. In return, Lily would perform at foundation events, participate in their community outreach programs, and eventually teach piano to underprivileged children once her education was complete. It was everything she had ever wanted, wrapped in a package she never could have imagined. Her phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number. She answered hesitantly. Lily Chen. Victor Harrington's voice was unmistakable even through the phone. Yes, this is Lily. I understand you received the foundation's offer today. Lily sat up straighter, as if Victor could somehow see her through the phone. I did. It's incredibly generous, Mr. Harrington. I don't know how to thank you. Do you have any questions before tomorrow's meeting? His tone was businesslike but not cold. Actually, yes, Lily said, gathering her courage. Why did you wait 3 weeks to send the offer? The judges made their decision the day of my audition. There was a pause on the other end. I wanted to be sure this was the right decision for both of us. The foundation has never offered such a comprehensive sponsorship before. It sets a precedent. And you're sure now? I am, Victor replied. Are you? Lily thought about her mother's improving health, about the prospect of returning to Juilliard, about finally being able to pursue her dreams without the constant weight of financial worry. Yes, she said firmly. I am. Good. There's one more thing, Victor added. The foundation is hosting a gala next month, our annual fundraiser. I'd like you to perform. Lily swallowed hard. Perform? In front of all your donors? It would be a fitting introduction. You'll be the face of what the foundation can accomplish. He paused. You'd play your original composition, the one from the restaurant. The piece she'd written during her mother's hospital stays, the one that had apparently reminded Victor of his sister. It was deeply personal, but perhaps that was the point. I'd be honored, she said finally. Excellent. We'll discuss the details tomorrow. Good night, Ms. Chen. After the call ended, Lily sat in the quiet kitchen, the reality of her changing circumstances slowly sinking in. She wouldn't have to return to Blue Harbor, wouldn't have to balance double shifts with community college classes, wouldn't have to worry about choosing between textbooks and her mother's medications. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope without reservation. The next morning, Lily arrived at the Harrington Foundation 15 minutes early, dressed in the same black dress but with a new sense of belonging as she entered the building. The security guard recognized her, nodding as she passed. When she reached the foundation's floor, Diane was waiting for her. Good morning, Lily. Right on time. She smiled warmly. The team is ready for you in the conference room. As they walked, Lily noticed that the foundation offices seemed busier than during her audition, with people moving purposefully between rooms and the sound of a violin coming from somewhere down the hall. We have several scholars in for lessons today, Diane explained, noticing Lily's interest. The foundation provides practice spaces and instruction from visiting musicians. The conference room had a wall of windows overlooking the city and a long table where several people were already seated, including Victor. He stood when Lily entered. Ms. Chen, thank you for coming. Please sit down. The meeting progressed efficiently with the foundation's legal representative explaining each aspect of the agreement. Lily listened carefully, asking questions when necessary, painfully aware that she couldn't afford a lawyer to review the documents herself. As if reading her thoughts, Diane leaned over. Don't worry, she whispered. This agreement has been vetted by our ethics committee. Victor insisted on it. When all the details had been discussed and all her questions answered, Lily signed the agreement. As she set down the pen, a strange feeling washed over her, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and something like vertigo at how quickly her life was changing. Congratulations. Ms. Chen, Victor said formally, extending his hand. Welcome to the Harrington Foundation family. As they shook hands, Lily noticed something different in his expression. A hint of the same emotion she'd seen when she played her composition, a momentary softening of his features, Now, he continued, about the gala. It's our most important event of the year. Every major donor and board member will be there, along with press and prominent figures from the music world. Lily's stomach tightened. How many people are we talking about? About 300, Diane replied, seemingly oblivious to Lily's growing panic. It's at the Metropolitan Club, quite lovely. 300 people. Music industry professionals, press. Lily had performed in recitals and competitions before, but nothing on this scale. Nothing with these stakes. You'll be our featured performer, Victor added. A 10-minute slot in the program, just before the main fundraising appeal. Your story, from Waitress to Foundation Scholar, embodies everything we want our donors to support. Lily nodded, trying to hide her nervousness. When is this happening? 3 weeks from Saturday, Diane said, checking her calendar. We'll need you to come in for a few planning meetings, and you'll have access to our practice facilities whenever you need them. As the meeting concluded and Lily prepared to leave, Victor walked with her to the elevator. You seem concerned about the gala, he observed as they waited for the elevator to arrive. Lily considered deflecting but opted for honesty. I've never played for a crowd that size or that influential. Victor studied her for a moment. The night at the restaurant. You weren't nervous then. That was different. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was just playing. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Victor held the door as Lily stepped inside. Then don't try to impress anyone at the gala either, he said simply. Just play. That's what moved everyone in the first place. As the doors began to close, he added, My sister would have given the same advice. Lily rode down alone, Victor's words echoing in her mind. Just play, as if it were that simple. As if 300 of the wealthiest and most influential people in the music world weren't about to judge her worth based on 10 minutes of performance. Yet, as she exited the building into the bright spring day, Lily felt a familiar determination rising within her. She had faced impossible odds before. She had worked double shifts while attending classes and caring for her sick mother. She had kept playing even when her dreams seemed permanently deferred. She could do this too. She would do this for her mother, for herself, and strangely enough, for Victor and the sister he had lost, the woman whose passion had created the opportunity. Lily now held in her hands the Metropolitan Club glowed with warm light against the evening sky as Lily stepped out of the car the foundation had sent for her and her mother. Crystal chandeliers were visible through tall windows, casting golden reflections on the street below. Men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns flowed through the entrance, their jewelry catching the light. I don't belong here, Lily whispered, smoothing down the midnight blue gown the foundation had provided for her performance. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever worn, but she still felt like an imposter. Her mother squeezed her arm. Helen looked better than she had in months, with color in her cheeks and a sparkle in her eyes that had been missing during the worst of her treatments. She wore a simple but elegant black dress borrowed from their neighbor. You belong anywhere music is played, Helen said firmly. Now stand up straight. You've earned your place here. As they entered the grand hall, Lily was overwhelmed by the opulence. Elaborate floral arrangements adorned every table. A string quartet played softly in one corner. Waiters in crisp uniforms circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Diane spotted them and hurried over, resplendent in a ruby-red gown. Lily, Helen, I'm so glad you're here. Come, let me introduce you to some of our board members. The next half hour passed in a blur of handshakes and small talk. Lily smiled and nodded at appropriate moments, but her mind was on the Steinway grand piano positioned at the front of the room, waiting for her performance. You look like you could use this, a familiar voice said. Victor Harrington appeared at her side, offering a glass of water. In his perfectly tailored tuxedo, he looked even more imposing than usual, but there was a hint of warmth in his eyes that hadn't been there the night they met. Thank you, Lily said gratefully, taking the glass. It's quite an event. The Foundation's most important night of the year, Victor agreed, surveying the room. These people fund our programs. Their donations make sponsorships like yours possible. Lily nodded, the weight of expectation settling more heavily on her shoulders. No pressure, then. Victor's mouth twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. You'll be fine. Just play, Lily finished for him. I remember. He nodded once, then turned to greet her mother, whom he had met during one of Lily's practice sessions at the foundation. "Mrs. Chen, you're looking well." "Thanks to your foundation's healthcare package," Helen replied with characteristic directness. "And please call me Helen." Before the conversation could continue, Diane approached. "Lily, we're ready for you. The program is about to begin." Lily's heart began to race. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself as her mother hugged her. "You'll be wonderful," Helen whispered. "Just like always." Victor didn't offer reassurances or advice. He simply gave her a nod that somehow conveyed more confidence in her abilities than any words could have. Lily followed Diane to a small waiting area adjacent to the stage. Through a gap in the curtains, she could see the guests taking their seats. So many important people, critics who could make or break careers, donors whose contributions kept the foundation running, musicians whose skills far outshined her own. The foundation's chairman took the stage and began welcoming everyone. Lily closed her eyes, trying to center herself. She had practiced her piece hundreds of times over the past 3 weeks, refining and polishing it until it was the best representation of her abilities. But what if it wasn't enough? What if these sophisticated, wealthy people saw her for what she really was? A waitress playing dress-up, a charity case, an imposter in their world. "And now I am pleased to introduce our featured performer," the chairman was saying. "A remarkable young pianist whose talent exemplifies the mission of the Harrington Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, Lily Chen." Applause filled the room as Lily walked onto the stage. The lights were brighter than she expected, making it difficult to see individual faces in the audience. She was grateful for that small mercy as she took her seat at the piano. "Ms. Chen will be performing an original composition," the chairman announced before leaving the stage. Alone now with the piano, Lily placed her hands on the keys. They were trembling slightly. She closed her eyes, trying to find the calm center from which her music flowed. Instead, her mind filled with all the ways she could fail. A memory flashed: Victor at the restaurant, cold and demanding, telling her to play something with passion or don't bother. The stakes were so much higher now. She opened her eyes and found her mother in the front row, smiling encouragingly. Beside her sat Victor, his expression unreadable. But as their eyes met, he gave her that same small nod from earlier. "Just play." Lily took a deep breath and began. The piece started softly, tentatively, just as it had in the restaurant. The same notes, the same melody she had composed during those long hospital nights. But as her fingers moved across the keys, something changed. This wasn't just about impressing an audience anymore. It wasn't about proving her worth to the foundation or justifying Victor's investment in her. It was about telling her story, their story. The story of a mother and daughter facing impossible odds together. The story of dreams deferred but not abandoned. The story of unexpected second chances. As the music built, Lily added subtle variations she hadn't planned. New harmonies that reflected not just the struggle and pain of the past 2 years, but also the hope that had recently entered their lives. The music flowed through her, honest and raw and real. When she reached the emotional peak of the piece, Lily glanced up briefly. The audience was completely still, many leaning forward in their seats. Her mother was wiping tears from her eyes. And Victor, stern, demanding Victor, was watching her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Pride. The final notes resonated through the hall, fading slowly into silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then someone in the back stood up. Another followed. Suddenly, the entire room was on its feet, applause thundering against the ornate ceiling. Lily rose from the bench, somewhat dazed by the response. She bowed as she had been instructed, then made her way off the stage on shaky legs. In the wings, Diane was waiting, her eyes shining. "That was magnificent," she said, hugging Lily impulsively. "Absolutely magnificent." As Lily returned to her seat beside her mother, people stopped her to shake her hand or offer congratulations. Critics who had reviewed world-famous pianists were asking for her contact information. Donors were telling her how moved they had been by her performance. Her mother embraced her tightly. "I always knew," she whispered. "Even when things were at their worst, I knew your music would find its way." The chairman retook the stage and began the fundraising portion of the evening, using Lily's story as his central example of the foundation's impact. "What you just witnessed is the result of talent meeting opportunity," he told the crowd. "Imagine how many other gifted musicians like Lily are out there, waiting for their chance. Your donations tonight make those chances possible. As the pledges began rolling in, 50,000 here, 100,000 there, Lily felt a tap on her shoulder. Victor gestured for her to follow him to a quieter corner of the room. That wasn't the same piece you played at the restaurant, he said when they were away from the crowd. It was, Lily replied, but different too. I added some things, Victor nodded slowly. It was better. More complete somehow. It had a different ending, Lily explained. The original was written when everything was uncertain. My mother's health, my future. This version reflects where we are now. And where is that? Victor asked. Lily considered the question. Somewhere better. Somewhere with possibility. For the first time since she'd met him, Victor smiled. A real smile that transformed his usually stern face. My sister would have liked you, he said quietly. She believed music could change lives. I'd forgotten that until I heard you play that night at the restaurant. Thank you, Lily said, understanding that his words represented more than just approval of her performance.
For remembering.
For giving me this chance. Victor's expression turned serious again. Don't waste it. Alexandra's vision for this foundation was bigger than scholarships and galas. She wanted to create a community of musicians who would pay it forward, who would use their talents to open doors for others. I won't waste it, Lily promised. I can't bring your sister back, but I can help carry on what she started. Victor nodded, satisfied. The foundation is already receiving calls about you. Critics, concert halls, recording studios. Diane will help you navigate those opportunities alongside your studies. Before Lily could respond, the chairman's voice cut through their conversation. And now I'd like to announce tonight's total, he said into the microphone. Thanks to your incredible generosity, the Harrington Foundation has raised over $2 million this evening. A new record. Applause erupted once more. Victor turned back to Lily. That's nearly double last year's total, he said. Your performance made quite an impression. As they returned to the main room, Lily saw her mother chatting animatedly with a small group of donors. Helen looked up and waved her over. Lily, come meet these wonderful people. They've been telling me about the Foundation's community outreach program. As Lily joined the conversation, she felt a strange sense of belonging that had nothing to do with the expensive gown she wore or the prestigious venue. These people had been moved by her music, not her status or background or circumstances. For the first time, she felt like perhaps she did belong in this world after all. Later that night, as Lily and her mother rode home in the Foundation's car, Helen reached over and took her daughter's hand. I'm so proud of you, she said simply. Not just for tonight, but for every day of the past 2 years. You never gave up even when things seemed hopeless. Lily squeezed her mother's hand. We never gave up, she corrected gently. And now we don't have to. As the car moved through the city streets, Lily thought about the strange journey that had brought her here. From the restaurant where a demanding billionaire had forced her to play piano, to the gala where she had moved hundreds of people with her music. From struggling waitress to sponsored musician with a future full of possibilities. Sometimes, she realized, life's most important turning points arrived in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes a single song really could change everything.